Hey, welcome to A Foreigner in the Philippines. I'm always interested when I see how corruption, which is always talked about in terms of Filipino culture, oh yeah, it's so corrupt, and I see that big business is quite possibly one of the leading contenders for the champions of corruption. And I'm looking now at something that has just surfaced on the role of the sugar industry in transferring the blame for heart disease over onto fat. So I'm looking at something here, look, and it says the bitter truth surfaces. I'm reading now. USCF's academic analysis of the sugar papers focused on communications between the two men, Roger Adams, a then professor of organic chemistry and sugar industry advisors, and D. Mark Hegsted, one of the Harvard researchers who produced Project 226. 226 was a more or less fake project of research that would show the answers that the sugar industry wanted, and that was to show that it wasn't sugar that was giving us heart attacks. It actually is apparently the leading cause of heart disease in America. Now listen. So it says these communications reveal several interesting facts. Sugar executive paid Harvard $50,000 in today's dollars and set the objectives for the project. So they set up the research. Now that's always been my point about how research and the results of research are very much dependent on the parameters that are set by whoever funds the research. So if you've got the makers of toothpaste funding the research, they're going to find the answers that they need to show that their product is doing wonders. Sugar executive paid. So, critical facts were suppressed about the role of blood triglycerides in CHD, right? Heart disease. In order to focus solely on the role of saturated fats and cholesterol. Industry executives contributed biased pro-sugar articles for inclusion in the project. So, they reviewed the project drafts and ostensibly approved the report before publication. The source of funding and blatant conflict of interests was not disclosed. Now, here's the thing, is that the mess goes much deeper than just the companies, because USCS professor and senior author of the analysis, Stanton Glantz, PhD, does not mince words. There are all kinds of ways that you can manipulate the outcome of a study, which industry is very well practiced on. He who pays the piper calls the tune. Sugar's death grip tightens. Now, as you may know, I've been trying to amend, I've been being led to amend my own diet in order that we will have greater success at having a child. And sugar is one of the big things that you have to get rid of. It's amazing. So it says sugar's death grip tightens. Thanks in large part to the success of SRF's saturated fat campaign, that is the campaign which tries to put all the blame on saturated fat, sugar has continued its ascent into dietary dominance. Now, the thing is that there was an insidious hidden agenda where the sugar industry knew, I don't know quite how they would predict this, but apparently they were able to, when someone goes on a diet and cuts out fat, sugar is one of the things that they will supplement their diet with. You never just give stuff up. You give stuff up and you replace it with something. That's why when people give up smoking, they usually start eating candy, and it helps to give up smoking. So they give up one thing that's threatening their heart, and they get another one that's threatening their heart. So I just wanted to put this out, because it goes through all. Yeah, so you give up fat, or you give up smoking, and you take eating candy so that you can cope with the with the loss of your poison, which you have now trying to give up. And boy, do I know about this. I absolutely love chocolate, and I can feel this is the nearest I ever come to understanding about addiction, is because addiction is that when you're in the grip of addiction, what happens is that you must have that thing in order to just feel normal. That's the thing. You can't eat enough chocolate to satisfy the addiction. You eat it until you're sick. And that's exactly what happens with sugary things. You need to eat it just so that the body can normalize itself. That's what's so terrible about addiction. I read about one street drug where it's a huge high at the beginning. Nothing quite like the high that this particular drug gives you. You know, it's like heaven. Now, after that first incredible hit, every other hit is just trying to get back that first hit, and it's an impossible task. You can't do it. So you remain addicted. Smoking, probably the worst addiction ever known to man, because people who have been addicted to things like heroin still say that the hardest thing to give up is smoking, and smoking is another killer. It's a heart killer. What else does it say? Right, thanks in large part to the success of SRF's saturated fat campaign, putting the blame on fat. Right? Sugar has continued its ascent into dietary dominance. It is one addiction that is literally killing us sweetly. Isn't that a nice phrase? Killing us sweetly. Collectively, listen, now this is amazing. Americans eat more sugar than any other nation, consuming in excess of 11 million metric tons of the powdery poison in 2017. Cardiovascular disease is not the only negative health outcome to stem from a high sugar, low fat diet. Dr. Robert Lustig, an endocrinologist from California, who gained national attention after his lecture, Sugar, the Bitter Truth, I like that too, play on words, went viral in 2009, has shown how excessive sugar consumption plays a key role in the development of obesity, type 2 diabetes, hypertension, and many types of cancer. His research has led him to conclude that 75% of all diseases in America are caused by lifestyle choices and are in fact entirely preventable. So that's it's a sobering thought, isn't it? It's making me think twice just about today that I had a piece of candy on a stick which I sucked on for a while and enjoyed thoroughly, and now I'm looking at this, and I've been told many times, sometimes you had to be beaten over the head with a 2x4 that has the name sugar written on it before you take it in. And none of us can prevail easily against an addiction. And sugar is one of the deadly ones. I always think of, oh well, I just love sugar. I'm no great lover of sugar, you know, but I do like chocolate. Yeah, aren't we full of contradictions? Aren't we full of making sure that logic doesn't get in the way of the truth? That's for sure. So, every time I read one of these things, then I get a little bit more angry about the fact that I'm not doing the right thing for my health. And let's face it, we're in charge of our health. Actually, it's not in the hands of our doctors, it's in the hands of us. Now, when you start to talk about obesity, now my last quote on obesity in America was 60%. 60% were obese. Now, I remember that I had friends who were both very much overweight, and this was a couple that I cared very much about. What did they talk about? Doing exercise. They were well into their 70s, a condition that I also happen to be quite familiar with, but they could hardly walk anywhere. They went everywhere on a golf cart because they lived in a place where golf carts were the thing. And there are many communities, condos, beautiful houses, trailer parks, very fancy trailer parks, places that you can live, and the surroundings are very much dominated by a particular lifestyle. And the more that I read about sugar, the more that I realize that the surroundings are very much dominated by the need to cope with an unrecognized, heavily denied sugar addiction. And of course we all know that you get the sugar high, you know, it gives you a bit of a buzz, and then later you feel like killing yourself or something because you get so depressed. But this couple, we got down to, when I realized just in what kind of a condition they were in, I recommended, well, one of you drive the golf cart and the other one walk. And what you should do is walk until you fail. Walk until you can't walk anymore. Right? No need to kill yourself. Just keep walking around the community, and your other half can follow in the golf cart. And when you feel that you can't do any more, you should always walk the same way, right? And I don't mean the Ministry of Funny Walks and Monty Python. I mean you should always walk the same route so that you can gauge whether you're improving. So you get to marker A and you call for the golf cart. You get in the golf cart and off you go home. And the next day you try to walk a little bit further, and then you call the golf cart, and so on, until you are perhaps able to walk an entire circuit. I don't think that they were ever able to manage to do that. They never did that. It was just too much. Now, at my age, I'm beginning to notice a loss of strength. I'm not as strong as I used to be. Now, my memory for how strong I was is very, very sharp. I was a pretty strong guy for my build. My build was always more of one of endurance, that of a cyclist, say, lean and not a huge amount of fat. So that was my physique, the physique of perhaps not quite a long distance runner, but a runner, a swimmer, a cyclist, and that was my build. And I remember how strong I was. I remember in terms of what I could lift in my workshop when I was building furniture. And I used to work commonly with 3/4 ply. 3/4 plywood, 8x4 sheet of 3/4 plywood is quite heavy. Lifting it onto the table saw and being able to put it through the table saw without killing myself required a great deal of strength. Now, I eventually began to realize that it was actually getting a little bit tricky. So I redesigned the way that I made my furniture. I used 1/2" ply and 1/4" ply, which makes up 3/4. And I was able to do a lot of stuff where I didn't even have to use the router to be able to rebate places that needed it. I was able to just vary the dimensions, and I would end up with a little step that could be used in the design of my furniture. So now I'm seeing that I need to get a grip and start doing more exercise. I was always a great walker, and now I can see that I don't do that so easily. Now, you got two things that you can do when, as your age begins to creep up on you, and it does creep up on you because we have a very good way of denying that things are happening. You walk slower, you get a little bit more stooped. You don't pull your shoulders back and your stomach in. You don't do those things because it's just a little bit harder. Now, when does this start? Depending on what kind of lifestyle you've had, it will start earlier and earlier depending on who you are and how you've lived. Now for me, it started very late. I built a house single-handed when I was 73 or 74. So I've been doing pretty good. But now I need to get a grip. Who tells you this? You tell yourself, and believe me, you will be very skilled at hiding it. Now, I know people who are probably in excess of 100 pounds overweight. Now, look at it this way, and I've tried to use this example before. You imagine that something that a joint. Now look, this actually here, if you look at this, it's a joint. Look at it, it's a little hinge. Right, so that's something that supports a particular activity. Your hip might be equated to something like this. Now, supposing you removed that little hinge and you put it on something, this by the way weighs hardly anything. I wouldn't even be able to guess how heavy this pair of glasses were. They're plastic, they're cheap readers, okay? So that little hinge there will work fine as long as you don't put a pound weight on the end of it and try to make it do the same job. That's what people are doing when they put 100 pounds on. And I always, ad nauseum probably for a lot of you, I always cite that example of Fat, Sick and Nearly Dead, the movie that it seems sometimes that nobody wants to watch. And the man who was around 350, maybe even more, pounds, and he used the juicer and he quit. And then he started talking to people in health, in order to spread the word of getting healthy and getting rid of extra weight and why. And the way that he showed what he used to carry around on the same joints as were designed for an average weight for his size and build of about 180 pounds. He showed about half a dozen bowling balls and said, I used to carry those around. Now, even if he could have held those bowling balls, it would have been difficult to actually walk. And when he had that weight on, it was difficult to walk. And when he started on his program, the most that he could walk was like 5 minutes there, including there and back. 5 minutes that he could walk. Boy, you'd hardly notice 5 minutes. You walk down to the local sari store, it's more than 5 minutes. Well, you walk from, if you're an American and you're in somewhere like Costco, you might, as an exercise routine that I've seen recommended to people who are excessive in their weight, will park at the far end of the parking lot and walk to the store. Oh, what an incredible challenge people are setting for themselves there. But my point is, talking about the addiction on sugar and the fact that don't look to the media and the companies that are making a profit for your answers. Get some kind of logic in how you think. Your joints, if you are heavily overweight, perhaps 100 pounds overweight or 50 pounds, you're carrying around 50 pounds constantly on joints that were never designed to do that. And if you can't think of it in any other way than that, it might help. So, sugar babies, try to do your best, as I am trying to do, if I can just get my wife to keep hiding the chocolate until I actually find a bit of willpower. It's a bit scarce at the moment. God, I could actually kill a Mars bar, do you know that? This is a foreigner in the Philippines. Bye for now.